Two Swedish filmmakers have been acquitted of desecration after they shot footage of the wreck of a ferry down to the Estonia, the ferry that sank in the Baltic Sea in 1994.
For nearly 30 years, the world accepted a tragic explanation for the MS Estonia disaster, until AI scanned the wreck.
Well, it all started with our research upon this topic, and we found out that a lot of the wreck wasn't surveyed back in 1994 when the accident appeared.
When the AI reconstruction finished, investigators saw something no survivor testimony had ever explained. Cars suspended in midair on the vehicle deck, deleted distress codes, an object beside the hull no one can explain, and a signal, sent, then erased. Was it really just an accident? Or did something far more disturbing happen that night beneath the Baltic Sea? A wreck the world thought it already understood. When the MS Estonia disappeared beneath the Baltic Sea in the early hours of September 28, 1994, the tragedy seemed, at least on paper, to be brutally simple. A bow visor failed. Water flooded the vehicle deck. The ship lost stability and capsized. Within less than 1 hour, 852 people were dead. Investigators closed the case within 3 years. Governments signed an agreement sealing the wreck as a protected grave, and the world was told there was nothing more to learn. But that certainty rested on a fragile assumption, that the wreck had been properly seen. In reality, no one had ever examined the entire ship. Divers in the 1990s were limited by depth, visibility, and time. Sonar images were grainy and incomplete. Large sections of the hull were buried in seabed sediment, hidden from view. Investigators reconstructed the sinking using witness testimony, mechanical theory, and fragments recovered from the surface. It was forensic reasoning without full physical evidence. That gap planted the first seeds of doubt. Survivors consistently described a violent metallic impact, not the gradual stress failure described in the official report. Some said the ship felt as if it had struck something solid. Others compared the sound to an explosion. These accounts were largely downplayed, not because they were disproven, but because investigators lacked the tools to test them. Over time, the unanswered questions hardened into theories. Some pointed to secret military cargo transiting the Estonia in the weeks before the sinking, later confirmed by Swedish authorities. Others speculated about submarine collisions, pointing to Cold War naval activity in the Baltic. A smaller but persistent group believed the wreck had been deliberately sealed to hide evidence of sabotage. None of these claims were proven, but none could be conclusively dismissed either. What made the Estonia different from other maritime disasters was not just the death toll, it was the absence of visibility. The wreck sat 80 meters below the surface, legally untouchable, frozen in time. Every theory, official or otherwise, was built around an object no one was allowed to properly examine. That changed only when technology caught up. Artificial intelligence did not enter this story to confirm conspiracies. It entered because modern seabed mapping demanded it. When high-resolution sonar, photogrammetry, and machine learning reconstruction were finally applied to the wreck decades later, investigators were no longer guessing at shapes in the dark. They were creating a precise digital replica of the ship itself. And the first complete view of the Estonia would reveal something no one had expected. The invisible fleet, the other ships built just like Estonia. The most disturbing revelation uncovered by the AI scans of MS Estonia wasn't even on the Estonia itself. It was on the blueprints. As forensic teams used machine learning to reverse engineer every weld, plate, and fracture on the ship, they weren't just looking at a wreck. They were auditing a design that had been used more than once. The Estonia wasn't one of a kind. She had sister ships. At least 3 ferries built at the same Meyer-Werft shipyard in Papenburg, Germany during the same era shared Estonia's architectural DNA. That includes the Diana II, which, shockingly, had the exact same bow visor system and underwent similar retrofitting after the Estonia disaster. But here's the part that shook maritime experts. While Estonia's wreck was sealed and politicized, those sister ships kept operating, often with minimal structural modification. The AI-based metallurgical analysis didn't just show missing welds and undersized lugs on Estonia. It confirmed that the construction teams had deviated from the original schematics, using torch modifications and incomplete welds across key stress-bearing zones. These weren't one-time oversights. They were systemic shortcuts, and if they happened on one ship in a series, they likely happened on more. Investigators quietly began cross-referencing shipyard logs from the 1980s. One internal report noted that the structural weak points in Estonia's bow visor, especially the understrength hinges and missing bottom support bars, were never flagged in the production checklists. That meant Meyer-Werft may have delivered multiple ferries with critical safety weaknesses, none of which were visible during routine inspections. Even more worrying, Several of these sister ships were still in use as late as the 2010s, sailing modified routes or operating under different names. Survivors of the Estonia disaster were stunned. If these vessels were never grounded, how many other crossings unknowingly flirted with disaster? Could Estonia have been one of many potential sinkings, just the one that actually happened? What AI had uncovered wasn't just what killed one ship. It revealed a pattern that could have doomed many more. In fact, some maritime historians now consider Estonia's sinking not as a standalone event, but as the only one of its class that was unlucky enough to break in the worst possible storm. The lost seconds. AI reconstruction exposed a silence that should never have happened. While most headlines focused on the gaping hull breach or the missing welds, few realized that the AI scans uncovered something even more unnerving. A communications blackout that lasted just long enough to seal the fate of hundreds. It wasn't just the damage that doomed the Estonia, it was what didn't happen in the final minutes. Using time-stamped audio logs, radar data from nearby vessels, and reconstructed bridge instrumentation, AI systems helped investigators align the final 15 minutes of Estonia's life second by second. And what they found was both stunning and tragic. A full 8-minute delay between the first known catastrophic impact and the first distress signal. 8 minutes. In a ship taking on water at that speed, that delay was everything. Survivors had long testified that they heard a violent bang around 1:02 a.m., but the garbled mayday wasn't sent until 1:22. Using machine learning to sync passenger accounts with internal system readouts, investigators now believe the bow visor had already torn loose as early as 1:05. Within the next 120 seconds, the loading ramp behind it began folding inward. Water was entering the vehicle deck before anyone on the bridge issued a single command to reduce speed, reverse course, or assess the bow. So why the silence? Here's where things get darker. The AI reconstruction suggested that internal alert systems failed to trigger properly. The green indicator lights, which falsely showed the bow visor as locked, weren't just misleading, they were inaccurate by design. Analysis of the wiring diagrams revealed that the light circuit was not physically connected to the hinge stress sensors. It simply showed that the switches were closed, not whether the structure was intact, which means the crew may have been looking at green lights while the bow was already gone. The AI even detected an eerie pattern in the crew's final movements. Based on footfall sensors, door logs, and energy consumption data, no one from the bridge ever went below deck to visually inspect the bow. It was protocol to stay at the helm. But in this case, that protocol allowed the disaster to unfold in silence. No one confirmed the noise. No one double-checked the ramp. No one turned off the engines. And when the mayday was finally sent, it was too late. AI didn't just reveal a design flaw. It revealed a procedural blind spot so lethal that it rendered experienced officers powerless. The vehicle deck. Horror. AI reveals cars frozen in midair. One of the most haunting revelations to come from the AI-powered inspection of the MS Estonia had nothing to do with steel fatigue, bow visors, or certification loopholes. It came from the car deck. Specifically, from what was left on it. For nearly 30 years, little was publicly known about the vehicle deck beyond general theories, that it flooded quickly, that water sloshed freely due to the free surface effect, and that the cargo inside likely shifted, contributing to the ship's rapid list. But when AI-assisted photogrammetry was finally used to digitally reconstruct the interior of the car deck, forensic teams saw something they never expected. Vehicles were not just crushed. They were twisted, bent, and in some cases, frozen in gravity-defying angles, as if time had stopped mid-disaster. The AI scans revealed buses embedded into the steel walls, sedans partially suspended with only one set of tires touching the floor, and a delivery truck sitting upright on its rear bumper, pinned against a collapsed roof beam. This wasn't random movement. It told a story of catastrophic imbalance. According to fluid dynamics models generated from the AI reconstruction, the force of water entering the vehicle deck was not horizontal, as previously assumed. Instead, it surged upward and diagonally, likely due to the Estonia's forward momentum when the ramp first gave way. Water hit the deck like a wall, lifting some cars before they even had a chance to roll. The damage patterns confirmed this. Tire marks ended in midair, door panels were sheared upward, and cargo was found wedged into corners that physics should have made impossible, unless the flooding was near instantaneous. Even more disturbing were the timestamps and positions of refrigerated trucks with their generators still attached. AI-processed footage of their interiors suggested that several trucks contained perishable goods that never had time to shift, meaning they were submerged while still upright, but never made it out of the loading bay. Their food was later cataloged as near pristine, eerily preserved by the icy Baltic seabed. Investigators now believe that the final flooding of the car deck took less than 2 minutes, not 10 as earlier estimates suggested. This single fact redefined the tragedy. Passengers had far less time to escape than previously believed. The suddenness, confirmed by the unnatural positions of the vehicles, explained why so many never made it out of their cabins. The ship didn't just sink, it collapsed inward, a hydraulic implosion masked by darkness. The forbidden cargo, what the AI couldn't scan, and why that matters. As the AI swept across the wreck of the MS Estonia with millimeter-level precision, mapping every fracture, deck, and twisted beam, there was one thing it couldn't uncover. Because it wasn't a physical structure, it was a sealed list. The original cargo manifest for Estonia's final voyage remains one of the most closely guarded and inconsistently released documents in the entire investigation, though Estline, the company that operated the ferry, filed standard shipping logs for customs purposes. Parts of the record, especially involving vehicles traveling under diplomatic exemption, were redacted or omitted from public reports. This alone might not raise alarm, until you remember what Swedish whistleblowers confirmed in the early 2000s. Military transports had taken place aboard the Estonia weeks before the disaster, and not just any cargo, classified Soviet-origin technology headed for Western intelligence agencies. The Swedish Defense Materiel Administration, FMV, later admitted this under public pressure, but they insisted it had no connection to the sinking. Still, survivors weren't so sure. Multiple passengers had reported seeing military trucks and unmarked vans loaded onto the car deck in Tallinn on the day of the disaster. Their descriptions didn't match the published cargo records. Some trucks reportedly lacked license plates, others had armed guards in civilian clothes, yet none of these entries appear in the official Estonian customs ledger. And here's where the AI scans come back into the spotlight. During the 2021 to 2023 Deep Sea Survey, several vehicle outlines were identified that could not be matched to listed license plate numbers or shipment documentation. These were found near the forward port section of the car deck, right where the initial flooding was most aggressive. In one case, the AI's photogrammetric imaging revealed an armored vehicle chassis, not a bus or civilian truck. That vehicle was so deformed by the collapse of the ramp that its contents couldn't be retrieved. But it raised a disturbing possibility. Was there something on board worth hiding? Some theorists believe this mystery cargo may explain the urgency behind the original secrecy, the diplomatic rush to declare the site off-limits, and the unusual speed with which wreck access was criminalized. Others go further, suggesting that the Estonia became a target not by accident, but by what it carried. No evidence has ever proven sabotage, and the AI scans did rule out external explosions. But the vehicle the AI couldn't identify? That remains untouched, unopened, and officially unmentioned. The object beside the hull. What lay next to the Estonia shocked investigators. While the AI scans of the MS Estonia focused largely on the hull, interior structure, and vehicle deck damage, there was one unintended discovery that investigators almost missed, until the sonar imaging flagged it. Lying just a few meters from the starboard hull, partially embedded in sediment, was an unidentified metallic object. At first glance, it appeared to be part of the Estonia's torn structure. But when analysts layered the original blueprints over the AI-generated three-dimensional model, something didn't align. The object didn't match anything known to have been part of the ship. It was roughly 2.5 meters long, cylindrical in shape, with a segmented body and what appeared to be symmetrical fin-like protrusions, the kind you'd expect on underwater munitions or deep-sea equipment, not passenger ferries. Its presence so close to the hull, in an area now known to have sustained catastrophic damage, reignited a decades-old debate. Did something strike the Estonia from outside after all? Swedish defense sources downplayed the find, calling it likely part of the vehicle cargo. But metallurgical scans revealed it was made from a titanium alloy, not a material commonly used in 1990s freight trucks or passenger cars, but very common in military-grade equipment, particularly torpedo casings or naval surveillance drones. What deepened the mystery was its position, just outside the gash that ran nearly 40 meters along the starboard hull. Investigators were quick to clarify that the AI had already confirmed the tear was caused by impact with the seabed. But this object wasn't buried beneath the ship. It was resting alongside it, intact, undisturbed. Was it part of a military shipment never documented on the manifest? A Cold War-era relic lying on the seafloor? Or, most controversially, was it involved in the final moments of the ship's descent? Because here's where it gets stranger. A declassified Soviet naval chart from the 1980s, pulled into the investigation for reference, marked the region where Estonia sank as an active testing corridor for undersea equipment. The Baltic, narrow and shallow compared to other seas, had long been used by both NATO and Warsaw Pact navies to trial submersibles, countermeasure drones, and non-drifting sonar buoys. The deleted security code, the signal that went out, and then disappeared. During the AI-aided reanalysis of the Estonia's final hours, much of the focus centered on physical damage, hull breaches, visor failure, and flooding patterns. But buried within the metadata of maritime logs and communications data, AI researchers uncovered something that didn't leave a hole in the ship, but left a massive hole in the timeline. At exactly 1:12 a.m., 3 minutes before the ship's lights failed and just 10 minutes before it capsized, Estonia's onboard systems triggered a signal logged as Code Sierra Bravo. To most observers, it seemed like a glitch. The official report never mentioned such a code. But in naval emergency lexicon, Sierra Bravo is shorthand in some maritime security circles for a breach of secured cargo or a special consignment protocol breach. The Estonia was a civilian ferry. It shouldn't have been capable of transmitting such a code at all. Yet there it was, briefly captured by an Estonian coastal monitoring station and partially relayed to a Swedish listening post. Within seconds, it vanished from the communication logs. Not overwritten, deleted. A single burst transmission, just under 2 seconds in duration, encrypted and flagged for priority channel relay. Here's where the AI came in. Using digital forensics, analysts reconstructed the ship's internal message queue and found that an automated script had been set to purge outgoing distress flags if no corresponding inbound acknowledgement was received. In other words, if the code wasn't answered, it was erased. This was not standard protocol. So who wrote the purge script? And more importantly, what system onboard Estonia knew to send Sierra Bravo in the first place? The only answer lies in a deeply classified layer of the Estonia's operating software, a layer inherited from one of her former identities. Before she was Estonia, she was Silja Star, and before that, Viking Sally, a ship that, according to declassified Cold War maritime registry documents, was briefly fitted with secure cargo capabilities during her early service years. Investigators now believe that one of those dormant security layers was never removed during her retrofits, and when whatever was in that mysterious vehicle on the lower deck became compromised, the ship reacted. But no response came. No flag was raised. The signal vanished. And with it, possibly the final clue to what Estonia was carrying that night, and why 852 people never made it to morning. Don't forget to subscribe. Click the card on screen.